Welcome to my markets commentary. Let's start with the Dow Jones first. Now, we saw a sell-off in the market on Friday with the letters that President Trump sent to Canada and so on and so forth. And Friday's sell-off is actually a one-day volatility breakout. It's not right to make comments about the overall direction of the market just by looking at one day of volatility. But within that one day of volatility, we saw a flight to safe havens in the market again. And what was that? It was gold, and we saw an outflow from stocks. At the same time, we also saw an outflow from bonds. But I repeat, this is just a one-day move. Secondly, there is still time until August 1st. There might be an effort by President Trump to put pressure on his rivals. These could all be negotiation techniques, negotiation tactics. It's not right to say, this or that will happen next just by looking at these. Technically, when I look at it, we're at the peaks in the S&P 500, and we're also very close to my initial target of 6,400. My next target will be determined somewhat by Chairman Powell's stance. I think it could go as high as 7,300. So my next target will be 7,300. If the S&P 500 can stay above 6,400, and then, of course, if Chairman Powell continues with the rate cuts from where he left off. Because at first, he was talking as if there would be absolutely no rate cuts this year. Now, they're saying there might be a rate cut in September. And there's pressure from President Trump. Things like much more rate cuts and so on. It's possible. This will keep going on. But things like him being fired and someone else taking his place shouldn't be expected in the market. I don't think that's a possibility. So, I still think there's higher potential in the S&P 500 and Nasdaq. And I want to remind you again that my target for the Nasdaq is 26,700. In US 10-year bonds, as I just mentioned, there was a move out of US 10-year bonds and US Treasuries in search of a safe haven and a shift into gold. So, as a result, interest rates also went up here. We don't recommend buying TLT while interest rates are rising. I might recommend buying TLT again when interest rates start to fall. Right now, let me remind you once again that what's happening here is just a one-day move. Now, from here on, I think the really interesting thing is cryptocurrencies. Especially in cryptocurrencies. In the comments I made 1 or 2 days ago, I mentioned that when we look at the total market, the big market as we call it, it hasn't returned to its previous level and is at a critical resistance. And, as you can see here, we saw that this level, that critical resistance level, was broken through strongly, especially on Wednesday. And after it was broken on Wednesday, it kept building on Thursday. Like this. Look, it kept building on Thursday. It was broken through strongly and continued on Friday as well. And after that, today is Saturday, and it's still going. And it's very close to its previous peak now. When you look at the previous peak, there's only about 2.5% or about 2.4% left to reach it. What does this mean? It means you need to be a bit more cautious as you approach this peak. Because before this, we said to buy. I mean, especially for Bitcoin, we said to buy. And as you can see in Bitcoin, it passed 110,000 and kept going. As you can see, it even reached up to Watson, entering the overbought zone. Now, this doesn't mean you should sell here. It just means that if you're going to buy from now on, do it a bit more cautiously. It means buy gradually. Otherwise, of course, hold on to what you have. Don't sell your Bitcoin. So, I usually have to explain these two things all the time. It's often asked, it's gone up a lot. Should I take profit? That's the question. No, it could go up even more. We don't recommend taking profits. We don't suggest taking profits unless we see it pull back after a rise. Taking profit makes sense if it's gone up to a point and can't go higher. Or if it goes up very quickly and then drops back fast and it can't go higher. We say, that's as far as it goes. We say, take your profits here. But right now, that's not the case with Bitcoin. Just, if you're going to buy from here on, do it in portions. So, for example, when I say buy gradually, I mean buy a portion, wait a bit, let it go up 2 or 3%, then buy again, and so on. Because now, maybe we're leaving behind the period when the trend was really strong. We're entering a period where the trend might slow down. Maybe from now on, the rises will be slower. Looking at it this way, yes, in the long term I do have a target of 134,450 for Bitcoin. But we might not get there right away. Just because there's a 134,450 target, I wouldn't recommend jumping in and buying Bitcoin with all your money right after such a strong move today. I suggest you buy gradually. We also said to buy Ethereum last time, especially after 2,700 was surpassed. 2,873 was also broken. I still think Ethereum can be bought, because it seems like there's a bit more room to go there. It looks to me like it could move towards 3,200, somewhere between 3,150 and 3,200. And after that, there's the 3,344 resistance. Ethereum might be a bit more preferable at this stage compared to Bitcoin. If you remember, I had been saying for a long time that I didn't really like Ethereum either, because Ethereum had dropped a lot from its peak, and for a long time, as you can see here, it fell a lot from 4,867 even down to around 1,300. But now, you can see that it's starting to recover again. It has also broken above the Ichimoku cloud, and especially on Thursday, it's continuing with a nice upward move. We like Ethereum. I've also been saying for the past few days to buy Ripple. There was a very rapid rise. The Ichimoku and everything else has been surpassed. I had mentioned before that the story in Ripple might be over as well. And as you can see, Ripple had dropped from around 3.40 all the way down to 1.90. But we see that it's gaining strength again. Just like with Ethereum, we see that it's rising very quickly and has entered a very overbought zone. In my opinion, you've missed the rally in Ripple. If you haven't joined in until now, then you've missed it. Because it rose very quickly. There was an extremely sharp increase. It's not right to say, go ahead and buy at this point. But if you ask whether you should sell, of course, I'd say hold on to it. Look, in this chart, on Friday it went up to 2.90, then pulled back. But you can see that it later came back to 2.85 as well. So, Ripple is still strong, but in this area where it climbed so quickly, look, there's also a resistance at the 2.93 to 2.94 level. You don't buy here, you hold, but you don't buy at this point. Overall, as I mentioned about the total, since we're approaching a critical resistance there as well, cryptocurrencies might pause a bit around these levels. However, if those resistances I mentioned in the total are broken, then of course, we could recommend buying again, expecting a strong rally to start anew in crypto. But right now, we're not there yet. Alright, now let's move on to silver. I had said they call silver the devil's metal because it stays flat, and then suddenly shoots up. If you buy while it's just sitting there and wait, you can make a profit, but if you don't buy while it's flat, if you hesitate and say, let's see if it goes up a bit, you end up missing out. Indeed, look, those who didn't buy while it was lingering around 33 in this area saw it shoot up strongly to 34, and then it just kept going like that. When it reached 36, they had no choice but to buy at those levels. We also said to buy a lot around the 36 level. Those who didn't buy at 36 are now finding themselves at 38. As you can see, we've also entered the overbought zone. We've reached our first target of 38.74. Our second target is $43 per ounce, but right now I think we're still far from that target. I don't expect it to reach there very quickly. So unfortunately, in my opinion, if you haven't bought silver by now, you've missed the rally. Because it gave you plenty of opportunities, and you didn't take them. Now that we're this close to our 38.74 target, we wouldn't recommend new purchases. We'd say hold on to what you have. However, if 38.74 is broken and it can stay above that level, then I could recommend buying gradually. Someone asked me this on Friday morning. Is it still possible to buy silver? They said. And I told them, today is the last day to buy. I said this in the morning. Today is the last day. And look, in the morning hours, around 8, 9, 10 o'clock, it breaks above the 37 resistance, and just as I said, yes, today is the last day, right around here, and then a very rapid rise follows. Especially after 4 o'clock, that is, after the markets opened in America, there was a very strong surge. So, those who listened and bought earlier made a profit. Here, I want to remind you of something. I made a video before and said, every flower blooms in its own time. Every flower blooms in its own time, that's it. Now it's silver's time to bloom. Before this, it was gold's time to bloom. There were times when Nasdaq bloomed too, and it will happen again. We experience this in cryptocurrencies as well, but it doesn't all happen at once. So, there's a lesson you should take from this. It's wrong to focus on a single asset class and try to make money by constantly buying and selling just that. You should diversify your investments across asset classes and wait patiently. Sometimes you'll profit from gold, sometimes from silver, sometimes from the stock market, and maybe at some point from crypto as well. But if you say, I only want to profit from the stock market, only from gold, or only from this altcoin, then the result can end in disappointment. Otherwise, everyone ends up smiling. We just don't know when that will be. And it's not possible to know that either. To circle back, I mentioned that the gold-silver ratio also supports this. Here, I had already mentioned that I thought the gold-silver ratio would drop below these 90s levels. And it actually dropped quite a bit. So at this point, we're no longer recommending new purchases of silver. But what about gold? As you might recall, we had said that gold was moving sideways. So, during that sideways movement, whenever there's a 2 or 3 day rise, people start asking, gold is going up, should we buy again? That's the kind of question that starts coming up. Right now, I don't see anything like that. Look, if we check the 2-hour chart, you can see that 3,365 is one of the previously observed resistance levels. There was a rise up to that point, but it couldn't break through. It tested that level again and couldn't break through. This is important. It tested that level again and couldn't break through. And look, the US bombed Iran. Gold still didn't return to its previous peak. Yes, there was a one-day event on Friday, and if this continues on Monday and Tuesday, then maybe a new upward trend in gold could start here. But as of today, nothing like that is being seen. So, while there's a strong trend in silver, the trend in gold has weakened. And as I said, when you look at gold on a daily basis, after 1, 2, 3 days of movement, some people start thinking, oh no, gold is rising again. No, it goes up for 3 days, and then drops on the 4th day. Let's see if it can rise on the 4th day. We need to take a look at this. Of course, gold could strengthen from here and come back up to that 3,429 level, and then continue to gain strength from there. When we look at gold's past cycles, something like this could happen until maybe July 21st. This is within the realm of possibility. But right now, we can't recommend buying just by saying that's how it's going to be. If you've been holding on to it for this long, you've already missed all the opportunities by now. You didn't buy silver. Maybe you missed the silver opportunity, you missed the Nasdaq opportunity, and you missed the crypto opportunity as well. You've missed out on many opportunities, so you'll have to wait. Gold might go up a bit more, and another upward cycle could start again. But right now, we're not in a position to decide to buy. We can't say, buy now. We can't suggest gradual buying. We've come to resistance and pulled back. That's all for today.